Former Great British Bake Off winner and media darling Nadiya Hussain has hit out at the BBC for axing her show without explanation. While speaking to Paul C. Brunson on his podcast, We Need to Talk, Hussain talked about why she thinks she was let go, despite having been quite a successful fixture of BBC programming for 10 years.
Do you believe that speaking your truth is one of the reasons why your shows at BBC were not recommissioned?
I think it's interesting because for a long time, I worked with the BBC for a really long time, and there's points where we've kind of I'd looked at working with other channels and other broadcasters. The feedback they gave us was, you're too BBC. And so I kind of resigned it in my head. I kind of like accepted in my head that I was very BBC.
Which means what?
I don't know what it means. It means, I suppose it means that they've got me exactly where they want me. I'm utterly unbiased.
Okay.
And just, they've got me where they want me.
You're neutral.
Neutral. And I am not neutral. I have opinions. And I have things to say. They'll keep you till you're of no use to them. And I think that's what happened. I think essentially I got lots of reasons why they couldn't commission the show. I had kind of rough reasons as to why they said that they couldn't commission the show, but no definitive, this is why we are not commissioning your show, considering my show got great ratings. I got the ratings every year, like really good ratings. So I can't see why there's a reason why my show wasn't recommissioned. But it was interesting because my husband and I always spoke about it, and he just said, there's going to be a point where like they're not going to need you anymore. And the second you don't fit the box, like they have a neat little box, when you don't fit that box anymore, there'll be no space for you. And I suppose I don't fit that space anymore.
Now, the BBC ending a contract with one of their stars isn't normally something we'd cover on Novara Media, but there's something, and actually a few things, about Nadiya and the circumstances under which she was axed that I think are worth noticing. Firstly, Nadiya talks in the interview about how she noticed a general shift in how the media industry treated her after she published her cookbook, Ruza, a journey through Islamic cuisine inspired by Ramadan and Eid. Here she is talking about the aftermath.
When I published my book, Ruza, that was the first book I published that was attached to my faith. And Ramadan is a huge thing in this country. 3.9 million Muslims are celebrating it, but we live in such a diverse country that no doubt somebody has a Muslim neighbor or a Muslim friend, and it felt like such a great book to do. And after 4 years of really fighting with the publisher to publish this book, I finally published it. And the day the book was published, a brand pulled out. The day.
A brand that was supporting you?
A brand that I was meant to be working with.
Oh, interesting.
Pulled.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was the reason that they gave?
Timing was bad. Even though we'd gone through negotiations and we were like going to work with this brand, really excited, pulled out, didn't work out. And I said, why do you think that is? What's different today to yesterday or the day before? What's happened? And then slowly, lots of people were pulling out.
Different brands.
Yeah, things were coming to an end. And that's when you feel gaslit, because they're like, it's just the industry, don't worry about it. This is just the way it is. No, it's not. What's changed? Come on. What's changed?
Right.
And that for me, just speaking out about that was a big deal. But I think my biggest changes have happened over the last, I'm going to say, 10 months.
Yes.
The biggest changes.
That's how it feels, at least from social.
So a couple of things strike me there. Firstly, when Nadiya was at her prime in the BBC, it was in a really different time. It was the kind of mid-2010s. It was an era of Black Lives Matter uprisings and corporations sort of cynically trying to capitalize off this heightened agitation around race and diversity. And within that context, Nadiya becomes like the jewel in the crown, and the jewel in the BBC's crown, for want of a better phrase. She's one of the few visibly Muslim, black, hijabi women doing primetime TV. But then we see, and I don't think this is controversial to say, a gradual backlash. We see the re-election of Donald Trump. We see the rise of reform. We see the racist riots of last year, and most recently in Ballymena. And we see this general thing that is called, an anti-woke backlash. And look, there's a lot of things to be said about kind of liberal identity politics, the limitations of it, the inherent conservatism of it. But a lot of the time when the word woke is used in kind of mainstream media, it's used to refer not to a set of politics that you might have a problem with, but just to kind of the presence of people who we aren't used to seeing in the public eye being in the public eye. I find that whenever I just sort of mention trans people on my social media, people will be like, you're being woke. And it's like, what, just because I'm acknowledging that trans people exist? That's not a set of politics. That's the existence of a particular group of people. But when we see that, as we're seeing this kind of shift, suddenly we see Nadiya going from being an asset to a liability. And she's kind of offboarded as swiftly as she was onboarded. And to me, that speaks to the way in which representation is not the same as power. And it also speaks to the fact that we're in a really troubling time where any discussions of Islam or Muslims seemingly has to happen on very particular and largely negative terms. But I also think that there's some subtext here, and I might be reading a little bit too much into this, but Nadiya talks about experiencing a shift in how she was treated by the BBC and others in the media industry over the past 10 months. And over the past 10 months, Nadiya hasn't just been writing a cookbook that ended up being controversial for God knows why, but she's also been one of the few high-profile media figures to speak out on Palestine. In May 2025, she was one of 1,000 UK food writers to sign an open letter demanding the UK suspend arms sales to Israel and pressure it into ending the blockade on Gaza. She's also posted extensively about the genocide in Gaza and used her platform to raise money for medical aid for Palestinians. Here she is discussing the tension that this has raised in her career in an Instagram video posted to her followers.
Hi guys, I hope you're really well. I just thought I'd get on here and say hello because it's been a really long time. To be fair, I'm really struggling to post stuff on here, especially food related, because obviously I work in food. It's really hard to post stuff on here because of what's happening in Gaza. And with Eid being tomorrow, it's really difficult to talk about food in a positive way, even though it is a positive thing and it brings so many of us joy. It is a really difficult thing to talk about because food is being used as a weapon in Gaza, and that it's making it, for me, I find it really difficult to post about food in a positive way. But I am trying to post things that I'm getting up to, especially with it being Eid tomorrow and the kids are really excited. So I'm posting bits and bobs. Yeah, so with that, there have been loads of changes to my career, my trajectory, especially because I'm way more mindful of who I work with, brands I work with, especially if they are brands that support the genocide. I because of that, I've kind of actively made sure that I'm working with brands that align with me. And so yeah, it's been interesting because there's been lots of changes in my career that I'm actually really excited about. I'm really excited about kind of taking back a little bit of ownership of what I do and how I do it and who I work with. And that's given me a freedom that I haven't had in the last 10 years. And one thing that has been over the last, I would say 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 years, I've been really kind of conscious of who I work with and brands I work with and people who align with me, and just trying my best to be my truest, most honest self has meant that I've had to think about where I'm working and who I'm working with. And so that's obviously come, because of that, lots of changes have come.
It's obviously impossible to know exactly what conversations happened at the BBC, and Nadiya herself says that she wasn't given any definitive answers. But Nadiya's sacking comes at the same time that the BBC have been cracking down really heavily on pro-Palestinian voices. They, of course, suspended Gary Lineker, one of their most high-profile presenters, on the basis that his social media activity violated the BBC's commitment to neutrality. And a lot of that social media activity was about Palestine, as well as the then Tory government's migration policy. The BBC is also building a track record in censoring its own journalism about Palestine. Most recently, this includes the shelving of the Gaza Doctors Under Attack documentary and the pulling of Gaza How to Survive a War Zone from iPlayer. And to me, it's kind of hard to not connect the dots with the sudden breakup between Nadiya and the BBC, even if she herself has not publicly speculated that this is what led to her firing. And I just think it's interesting how when you enter these kind of heritage institutions, often it has to happen under the silent assumption that you will be an incredibly conservative. It's kind of why the Conservative Party have almost done a much better job in terms of, the diversity of their front bench, because the only way that you can be in a position of power politically is if you are committing, and you are a person of color or you're a woman, is if you are almost the most conservative that you can possibly be. That's a safe option. Whereas if you have a more radical politics, or even just a more like left of center politics, that kind of reads more threateningly if you come from, a racialized background, if you're a woman, etc. It's more of a threat. It's the politics that makes you a threat rather than just simply the identity.